This confidence booster question is going to help to build the exam technique skills that you need to pass the AAA exam. This is one of the resources that's included in my paid course that I'm making available for free here for you on YouTube so that you can see the style of my support and you can get some free help too. My course really works. I'm incredibly proud of my pass rate from the June 22 exam sitting. 81% versus the global pass rate of 31%. And the reason it's so high, well, mainly it's because my students work really hard, but I give them loads of support and guidance to give them the best possible chance of passing the exam. Lots of videos giving you technique advice and lots of marking from me so I can give you tailored feedback on how to improve your answers. If you want to get in touch with me to talk about joining one of my courses, scan the QR code that is showing on screen now. Right, into this confidence booster recording. Welcome to this confidence booster on reporting. And this focuses on reporting to those charged with governance, one of the three types of questions we see regularly coming up on reporting. So showing on screen here, we've got a scenario telling us there's a draft profit before tax of 6 million, something about a revaluation, an out-of-court settlement, and some information about a lease that had been incorrectly accounted for but has now been corrected by management. The requirement here is to firstly identify the matters which should be reported to those charged with governance, and secondly, explain why we are reporting them. Make sure you take into account that second part. Okay, so first job for you is to pick out 3 matters. I mean, this should be hopefully quite straightforward. Pick out 3 matters to report to those charged with governance. Right, here are those 3 matters. Firstly, there's been a change in accounting policy about the revaluation. And we need to report that to those charged with governance. That's one of the things, isn't it, if they've changed accounting policy. Secondly, around this out-of-court settlement, there's been a lack of information provided to the audit team. And finally, with this lease, there's some incorrect accounting treatment that's gone on. Okay, those are the 3 matters we're going to report. And what I'd now like you to do is to go through and explain why these are going to be reported to those charged with governance. And imagine you're trying to pick up 2 marks for each of these points. Okay, let's go through the first one, the change in accounting policy. Firstly, it's important to note that property was revalued for the first time. Okay, it's a change in policy. And they've done it correctly. This is allowed under IFRS because all of the properties were revalued, and that makes it they've done it correctly. And I'm telling those charged with governance how much long-term property increased by, that's 2 million. Notice that here I've done a lot of just repeating of facts out of the scenario because those charged with governance don't know this information. They're the people on the audit committee and the non-executive directors who aren't involved with running the company. And so, although I'm told this in the file notes, the senior guys at the business who aren't involved in running it might not know this. So there is some credit for just repeating back stuff out of the scenario, but only a bit of credit. The real credit is going to come for explaining why I need to explain this. So the reason I'm doing this is to explain what the impact of this change in accounting policies might be on certain ratios, on the financial statements, and on the comparatives too. You see I've added extra depth there, and that extra point explaining why they need to know about it is going to be the bit that scores me most of the marks. What about this lack of information then? We weren't shared all of the information about this confidential out-of-court settlement. And one of the rules for management around auditing is they do have to provide the auditor with all information and explanations. So this court case was highly material because the size of it, 3 million, over our draft profit before tax is 50%. And that information was not provided to the auditor. Why is that so important? Well, without it, The audit opinion will be qualified because of the material lack of evidence that's been provided. And management have breached their responsibilities, oversharing information and explanations with the auditor. And the reason I'm telling those charged with governance about it is so that they can address this. They can tell the executive management team and the finance department to share this information for the current audit. And on future audits, they should be sharing this sort of thing with us. What about this last one? This seems a bit weird, doesn't it? Although they've made an error, they've corrected the error. So why do those charged with governance need to know about it? Well, it was a highly material transaction, error, and although it's been adjusted, it indicates the person who was preparing the financial statements, well, they may lack the required competence. I could have said professional competence there, but they might lack the financial expertise. They don't understand the financial reporting rules. Why do those charged with governance really need to know about that? Well, it might mean they've recruited the wrong people, or it might mean that they need to provide training to that finance team. So with those charged with governance reporting question, the temptation is just to repeat facts from the scenario, but you get the real credit for the added value stuff, for explaining why it is that those charged with governance really need to know this information. I hope you found that recording useful and it's helping you to build the exam technique skills you need to pass AAA. Here are some more free resources that you might find useful. And if you want to get in touch with me, scan that QR code. So firstly, my podcast. I take real world events and discuss them from an auditing perspective to really bring the subject to life. Those are available for free on all of the major podcast platforms. Just search for ACCA Ben Wilson. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be releasing a lot more of this type of video and other videos too that will help you to pass. So subscribe so that you don't miss out. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post things like quizzes that get quite a lot of comment and debate about auditing issues. So you'll find those useful if you subscribe to me. I also post exam technique tips on there too. And finally, have a look at my website. It will give you a real idea of all of the support that I provide.